Good afternoon, everyone who's with us, and welcome to our fifth concurrent session of the day, Human Cannonballs and Geniuses, Boosting Performance in Online Discussions. Our presenters today are Leah Rosenberry and Tammy Tucker from Purdue Global. Leah Rosenberry has been teaching college-level math for 20 years. She has a master's in education with an emphasis in math education and over 24 graduate hours in mathematics and statistics. With over 16 years in online education, she has experience in curriculum development, creating online content, training and mentoring new instructors, and writing and facilitating online courses. Leah is currently an IT training specialist at Penn State and is assisting in the effort to move the university to remote instruction. Tammy Tucker's online journey began over 17 years ago. In addition to teaching, she has served as the subject matter expert on multiple course revisions and is the course lead for Purdue Global's highest enrollment math class, Survey of Mathematics. She is responsible for keeping the course current and relevant and building a faculty learning community for the course. She earned her BS and MS in mathematics and has taught all levels of mathematics courses, both on-site and online. If you have any questions for the presenters during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A at the bottom of our Zoom meeting, and we'll address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to Leah and Tammy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I am Tammy Tucker. I'm so glad you guys came today. Leah and I are very excited about the presentation today. We're very excited about the topic. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. And if you guys could just give me a yes that you can see my screen. Okay, thanks, Leah. Yes, give me the thumbs up. That's always good to know. Just out of curiosity, if you guys don't mind, in the chat area, will you let us know what subject you teach? Because that would be very interesting for us. We are both math instructors. We've had our experience online and on-site with math, but we know that there are several in here who may be teaching from other disciplines. And we will just keep track of those. All right, very good. And Leah is going to help. Ooh, okay, good. Some math. Yeah, math's awesome. Math and English. Ooh, economics. That's one we don't see very often. Psychology, composition. All right, awesome. Ooh, college success. That's a good one also. All right, well, let me go ahead and get into our presentation just a little bit. And if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to type them into the chat or into the Q&A. Leah's going to help me out monitoring that, and then she's going to butt in whenever she needs to. We have known each other for a really long time, and we have worked together for a really long time. And so we can do that with each other, and it's all good. Our demographics at Purdue Global may be similar to your institution. They may be a little bit different, but I wanted to just share with you kind of where we're coming from. About 30% of our students are military. They're either currently in the military or they were in the military. Some of them are actually deployed. It's not uncommon to have a student that is in overseas in Germany and Japan and South Korea. We have students really all over the place. So for us as instructors, we do have to keep that in mind. Also, over half of our students will be the first to graduate with a college degree in their family. This is a huge milestone for them. They are very excited and they are ready to work hard, but they don't have the experience that some others have of parents who have gone to college and can give them advice about how to get through it successfully. And then lastly, about 2/3 of our students have at least one dependent. This could be a child, it could be a parent, it could be somebody else they're taking care of. The reason I'm bringing this out is because most of our students, school is not their primary focus. That is not their number one on their list. They have a job, they have family to take care of, and they are going to school mainly for two reasons. Either they want to totally switch careers because the one they're in is just not working out, or they need that piece of paper, they need that diploma in order to go up the ladder, in order to advance into that next position. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Several years ago, Leah and I were asked to revise one of the courses, and there were 3 things that we really wanted to put into our new course. We wanted to make sure that all the examples we used were actually real examples. You've seen the memes about, if you go to the store and buy 67 watermelons, all that kind of stuff. We didn't want to have any of that where students were like, well, that's never happened to me. I'm never going to go buy 67 watermelons. We wanted to make sure that all of the examples were very accurate and that the students could easily see where they could use those examples in their everyday life. We also wanted to put in just a little bit of humor. We'll talk about why in just a second. But if you think back to your favorite instructors ever when you were in school, not saying they were clowns, but they did have a good sense of humor. They could laugh at themselves. Sometimes they laughed at us. So we really wanted to make sure that the course included just a little bit of humor. Then we were also experimenting with guided peer replies, and I'll show you an example of those in just a second also. So those were our goals with the course revision. Now, those of you who are math people, you see these objectives and you're like, yes, but everybody else, when you look at these 4 objectives, assume that you are a student and you're walking into a class and you see these objectives up on the whiteboard, blackboard, PowerPoint, whatever. What is your first response going to be? Are you going to be super excited and ready to learn? Or is there something else that might be going through your head whenever you see all of these things that you're going to be covering? And Leah, you're a math person. Pretty much what we see is if somebody is not, fear, exactly, Catherine. Fear and just this, almost like I'm just going to give up right now because I don't even know what these words mean. That's something that we are really, really trying to avoid in a math class. We don't want students to shut down the minute they walk in the door. So what if, instead of entering the class and seeing these objectives, what if you saw these instead? Most of us would be like, oh, and we wouldn't shut down immediately. We would start to say, oh, this is different. Never seen this in a math class before. And so we might be a little more open-minded and our brains won't freeze up immediately whenever we see the phrases that we're not accustomed to. Here's an example that we've used in our courses, and it's about the evil genius. And I know you guys can read it, so I'll let you read it. Now, I know this may not be so real life because we probably have not experienced this in our lives, but it is something we can relate to, and it's a little humorous. And I like to tell this story. Leah kind of rolls her eyes at me, but we actually had a discussion whenever we were creating this discussion board, whether 100 cc's was way too much to inject into a baby or not. We were wondering, is this just totally unrealistic? Is that a lot? And so we had that discussion. So we did try to make it a little realistic. But a discussion question like this, what students don't realize is they're learning how to work with fractions. They're learning the order of operations. Whenever we ask them to do this, it's a little fun. And we have older students in our classes, and they realize very quickly that it's awesome that they're older, because the older you get, the less of this material you're going to have in your body. So some of our older students are like, yes, this is the one time I'm just super excited to be old. So they get that also. The guided peer replies are when we give students a little bit of guidance as what we expect from them as a reply. So maybe in your discussion boards, you kind of set this up the same way. You ask the entire class a question, and they have a deadline in which to reply to that question. And then you may also ask the students to reply to some of their classmates. So this is what these are. We ask our students to reply to at least 2 different classmates. And the first one is usually something just a little mathy. We're asking them to tweak the problem just a little bit, maybe solve for a different variable, something like that. In this case, we've asked them to add 2 years to their classmate's age to see how much of the material is left in their body. The other reply to a classmate, we allow them to get a little bit creative. This second peer reply, I actually love reading the responses from our students on this second peer reply because most of them involve some kind of superpower that we have gotten because of this injection. They're usually very, very creative and witty. And reading these really helps us get to know our students a little bit better. It also gives the students who are maybe a little bit afraid of math an area where they can post and they know they're going to be successful. So that's another reason that we put this one in there. Another way that you could tweak this one for a class reply, let me go back a slide. If you look at the equation, what they're asked to do is they're asked to take their age and plug it in for A. You can always ask students to pick an amount and try to find the age that is left. So that's just kind of a whole other problem that they can do. And again, it just kind of tweaks the math just a little bit. This is one of our favorite memes about math people, and it may take you just a minute. But this is very true. In our courses, there are pretty much two types of students. Those who are excited to be in the math class, and then those who aren't. So we do try to lighten the mood just a little bit and let the students who aren't very excited about being in a math class, we want to let them know that it's okay. They don't have to be perfect all the time and that we make mistakes too. And that releases the anxiety just a little bit. There is some research on how humor can be beneficial in our classes, both on-site and online. And again, we're not asking anybody to be a clown or get up and put on a show or anything like that. But realize that if we are super serious the entire time, the students are less likely to be engaged. And that's what the first bullet point says. You don't necessarily have to be serious in order to be effective. Of course, we want to maintain standards, and of course, we want to be professional at all times. But it's also okay to lighten the mood just a little bit in order to get our point across. Using a little bit of humor can also increase learning, self-motivation, class attendance, and test performance. And I don't know about you guys, but have you noticed this very strong relationship between class attendance and overall grade? Have you noticed like the more students attend class, usually the higher their grade is? Anything we can do to make attending class not so painful, to make it almost fun, then they will look forward to class. They'll be more excited about attending class. Exactly, Carla. Yes, exactly. And that will help them out in all other areas. If they come to class, they're going to get the material, which is going to increase their motivation, hopefully, and it's going to encourage them to work a little bit more. Some other ideas from this same research is that we need to make sure that our learning environment is a positive one, not only socially, but emotionally. We need to make sure that the students are learning. We need to make sure that we're not shutting someone out by the things that we say. And so even though we are saying, yes, be a little bit humorous, we need to make sure that we don't go overboard with it and that we don't go too far the other way and shut out some of those students. But whenever we do use a little bit of humor, it takes the distance between student and instructor down just a little bit. It brings us a little bit closer because the student will start to see you as a person and not just like this maybe robot who's teaching them on the other side of the screen. And all of us might get a little bit of anxiety whenever we start a new course. Including a little bit of humor, especially in the first couple of weeks, can really just help reduce that anxiety. It's a little bit of a stress reliever, especially when we hit material that either the students haven't seen before, or maybe they just don't use it all the time. And so it's a little bit new for them right now. One of the articles that we're referencing, and all of these will be at the end of the slideshow, by the way. The student, sometimes it depends on the grade that they make. A lot of students determine success by the grade, but some actually determine success by how much they learn and their interaction with their instructor. Remember at the beginning of the presentation, I asked you to think about your favorite instructor back when you were in school, and it may not have been the class you made an A in. It may not have been the easiest class. It may have been a really difficult class, but it may have been the class that you really learned a lot and you just really connected with that instructor. Humor can help us do that. Humor can help us connect with our students a little bit more. And of course, as we increase our connections, then the students are going to feel, it's like the domino effect. They're going to feel more comfortable. They're going to come to class more. They're going to ask more questions. They're going to be more motivated to complete their assignments. So it really does help our students to feel a little better about the class overall. Since we teach math, we take it wherever we can get it. Here's one of the discussion questions that we had in the previous version of our college algebra class. And another thing that Leah and I laugh about is we actually wrote this. Which method of solving quadratics is your favorite? Because we have a favorite method. Doesn't everybody have a favorite method? And then we gave them some problems. They worked on all that kind of good stuff. And while we thought this was an awesome discussion question, what we realized was no, it really isn't. It's very dry. So what we did is we changed it into a human cannonball. Instead of a student reading this thinking, okay, I need to go look up what quadratic means because I really don't remember. And then there are different methods. I didn't even know there was more than one method for solving this. And instead of stressing them out and building a wall between them and the discussion question, whenever they see this, they're like, oh, this looks fun. We allow them to pick the height that they are starting. It has to be more than 10 feet off the ground. And then we also researched the initial velocity for human cannonballs, and we found that to be, I think it was between 75 and 125 miles per hour. Does that sound right, Leah? I think that sounds right. And so we asked them to pick a velocity in between those two, and they find how long it will take them to land safely on the ground, because we do tell them, thanks, Janet, we do tell them there's a net and you're going to land safely. They will work this problem, but then for the peer replies, we ask them to think about it just a little bit more. For the first peer reply, we say, okay, reply to one of your classmates and figure out how high they are in the air after 1 second, after 5 seconds, and after 10 seconds. So in other words, they're taking the equation, they're doing something a little bit different. They're actually plugging in t, and they're finding y. So it's a way just to make it mathy. They're still doing math, and make them think about it, because when they plug in t, pretty much all the answers are negative. So they get a height that is negative. And that gives us the opportunity to say, what does that mean? What does that mean if your height is negative? Does that mean you've gone below, like, did you crash and make a hole in the ground? And the students are like, oh, no, that just means you've already landed, because they understand that. It's also a good segue into popping up just a parabola on a graph and talking about, okay, here's the start, here's the end, even though the parabola goes on, here's our realistic time. So it leads into a lot of different learning, and it's very practical because they can see this. With the old discussion question, with those quadratics, they had no idea what that was. But they can imagine what a human cannonball looks like, and they can see it. And then of course, for peer reply too, we had to do something super fun with it. So for the mathy people, we said, okay, you can check your classmates' solutions and make sure they're right. Or if you're not a mathy person, then you can come up with a scenario of why your classmate was shot out of a cannon. Leah has gotten a couple of really fun responses about this one. They usually involve us. They usually involve either us being shot out of the cannon or us daring them to do something, or they're out with their friends and their friends have dared them. But my favorite one was from one of Leah's students, and circumstances presenting themselves. He was shot over the Empire State Building, and his pants got caught on the very tip. And so he also set the world record for a wedgie. So that was a really fun one to read. Again, it's fun for us to read these. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I'm on a discussion board, I really don't look forward to reading the responses. I know that's horrible as an instructor to say, but these not only motivate the students, they motivate me. I get excited about reading what the students have posted. So that's just another idea of how using this and just making our problems a little more realistic and adding some humor into them can increase engagement on the discussion boards. Here's some research on using the peer replies. The reason that we chose to do this and make it a little more mathy, and like we were talking about extending the conversation, talking about graphs, talking about, oh no, these people have already landed, that's why the height is negative, all that kind of stuff, is because that's most likely what actually happens in an on-site course when you're face-to-face. Students may ask these questions like, wait a minute, I got a negative number, what does that mean? Well, it's a way for us to go ahead and address that and let the students answer those questions, ask and answer those questions. So that's why we decided to do the guided peer replies for one of them and then kind of a creative one for the other one. It allows us the opportunity to do a little more instruction and allow them to do a little bit of learning without really knowing about it. They can look at their classmates' posts and they'll be like, oh yeah, okay. That encourages them. As you can tell, we also use a lot of memes. These help students just relax a little bit. There are a couple that our students usually laugh about in the chat. They type in ha 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 a lot and they enjoy them. And then they also get to where they send us memes, and that's kind of interesting also. I hardly ever talked to my instructors when I was in school. So the fact that some of my students will email me with just a joke or something really makes me feel good. Another one that we incorporated into one of our classes is the Trapeze Artist. So notice that there's a fraction under a radical. So we were dealing with radical equations in this one. And we do give the students some guidance here. G is the gravitational constant, which doesn't change. So we give them that. But the L, we usually tell them to take their height and then add 10 feet for the length of the trapeze. And then they can figure out how much time it's going to take for them to do one full swing. For the guided peer replies here, one thing you can do is you can say, okay, add another foot. What happens to the time when you add another foot or 2 feet or 3 feet, whatever you want to do? Or you can give them a time and ask them to find out how long the entire pendulum is, subtract off the trapeze, and you'll know how tall the person is. And then again, peer reply 2, we're letting the students be a little more creative. We've also started with the peer reply 2, allowing students, especially in our business classes, because some of our students are in the business field right now, and whatever we're covering is what they're doing in their job. So we also allow the students to reply with some really cool things about their job that apply to this unit. We've even opened it up, and we can talk about this later, is asking the students to make a short video. So I had a business class and we were covering contribution margin, and one of my students did a video for their peer reply 2. They had just opened this little small business in a workshop. So they had just a garage out back and they were doing work. They did have to make a payment on that little workshop. And so he was showing us a video. He had little posters that he was using. It was really cool. And it was very engaging. And I fully am confident that he knows exactly what contribution margin is. So anything like that we can do to get our students engaged is going to bring them in a little bit more. It's going to help them learn a little bit more. And truthfully, it makes the class more fun for us as instructors also. Here's another one that we put into our courses. It's about caffeine. So our students get to pick their favorite beverage and they look at the can or the box or whatever. They can look on the internet and they can figure out how much caffeine is in one serving for them. So maybe one serving is a can of Coca-Cola. Maybe one serving is a liter of Pepsi. They go through and they figure out what their favorite beverage is, and then they find the amount of caffeine in one serving for their particular beverage. And it's for the entire serving that they're going to intake. It's not just necessarily for one serving of the bottle. Because, sometimes bottles, it's like 3 servings in the bottle. We have them go ahead and add it all up. And then they figure out how much caffeine is going to be left in their system after a certain number of hours. One variation of this is to say, okay, scientists say you can't go to sleep if you have so much caffeine in your system. If you drink this at 5 p.m., how long is it going to take you to be able to fall asleep? And students kind of enjoy that also. And as you get older, isn't that the truth? I can't drink caffeine past what, maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or I'm up half the night. So this is definitely a good thing for our older students to think about. The young ones are like, oh, I can fall asleep anywhere. But as we get older, we're like, no, we can't do that. And then we have the students say, well, what if your classmate just like chugged 3 of them real quick? You know, how much caffeine is left in their body? And then you can do the same thing about how long is it going to take them to be able to fall asleep. And the scenarios on this one are pretty interesting also. They come up with some really good ideas. One of the others that we incorporated was the man cave / she shed. The students are designing their own little shed or cave in the backyard. They can do all kinds of calculations with this. There is perimeter in case you want to put twinkle lights around it, or maybe you want to put a nice little fence around it. There's area for flooring, and some of our students pick out some super cool flooring to go in their place. But the idea is they are creating this, they're designing this for a contest. So it's very interesting to see students, what they pick out and what they go with and how they design it. And then they're doing these calculations to help determine how much it's going to cost. And I think that's why some of them go with really expensive material. Because they're like, hey, if I'm getting this paid for, I'm going to go for the good stuff. The next one is talking about the budget. This is applicable no matter what your major is. So we do include this in our math courses. And us as adults, we may be like, well, doesn't everybody know how to budget? No, they don't. And you would be surprised how many students during this unit say, I am so glad we covered this. Some of them say, I've never been taught how to budget, even though they were probably taught in high school. You know, you're not thinking about this stuff in high school. You're thinking about your date and your food. That's all you think about. So they're thinking, oh, I'm glad we're going over this because I need to know how to do this. It's especially important for business majors because they're going to be doing this. Or maybe they're like, you know, I know I need to have a budget. I just don't know how to do it. Or maybe they're like, oh, I've been budgeting for a while. And that's where they can really help out their classmates. So budgeting is very near and dear to my heart. And so I'm really, really glad that this one was in there. Yeah, exactly, Megan. You don't just want to have them do the math just for the sake of doing math. I mean, I would, but I know not everybody enjoys that. So making sure that they understand the application or see the application is very, very important to us. And then our last example is a road trip. And this is dual purpose. This is dual purpose. Not only is this talking about the metric system, which we do want to expose our students to because hardly any business is just in the US anymore, right? When our students graduate, they're probably going to be working for an international company, corporation, or dealing with companies, colleagues, something like that overseas. So we definitely want them to be familiar with the metric system, even if they're not using it all the time in their life. They need to know how to do it. So the first purpose is to just get the students working with the metric system a little bit. The second purpose for this, do you guys know what the second purpose, the alternate, what do you call that? Alternate objective for this one, can you guess what it is? I know I asked a hard question, didn't I? There is an ulterior motive. Not only conversions, but read the first couple of words. The first couple of words say, congratulations, you are graduating. Yes, yes. We want them to keep that goal in mind. And this discussion question is about halfway through the course. And that's when some students, especially if they're on the bubble, they could take it or leave it from here on out. We're trying to get them to think again about why they are here. Look to the end. Look to the end. Think about why you're here and what you want to do here. Think about graduation. And Leah and I have been lucky enough to actually get to go to some of these in-person graduations. It is awesome. And we talk about that with them. We say, listen, guys, we've been to graduations before and it's amazing. And we talk about it a little bit and just get them excited about that again. Every once in a while, everybody needs a little boost, right? So we use this one to remind them of their goals. So anytime you can fit that secondary objective or ulterior motive into a discussion question, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Yes, definitely think about the reward for your labors. All right, now we're going to stop talking about examples so much. And we have done a lot of math examples because, well, we're math people. But what we want to do now is talk about some best practices. And then I think we're going to have time to let you guys brainstorm, especially those of you in English, because there are some really cool ones. Economics. Oh, I think could be some really cool applications there. So let's talk about some best practices, but I wanted to go ahead and kind of get your brains thinking there about some really cool applicable discussion questions that would be fun, maybe a little humorous for your students, and then we'll ask for those in just a second. But first of all, let's talk about the best practices for doing this. Of course, the content comes first. Our objectives need to be met, right? That's the main reason we are here, is to transfer information for our students to learn the information so that they can get their degree and go on and meet their goals. But what we're trying to do is take that content and, where applicable, we're going to put in just a little bit of humor. I mean, the budgeting question, that didn't have humor in it, right? The road trip, that really didn't have humor in it, but where we can and where we think is appropriate, we're going to insert that just a little bit to get the students a little more engaged. What we try to do is we look at a concept. For example, when we were doing the human cannonball, we were like, okay, quadratics. We know this is one of the things we cover in our college algebra class, quadratics. Okay, what are some applications of quadratics? And usually it's throwing a ball or a rocket or something like that. Well, one of them we came across was human cannonball. It's like, yes, that's the one. That's the one that is going to spark the students' interest. It's going to get their attention right off the bat. And they're not really going to think that they're doing a quadratic. They're going to think that they're doing a human cannonball problem. Also, if you notice in the peer reply 2, we really tried to let creative students express that creativity. We have this thing where we are writing across the curriculum, and it's where pretty much every single class you take, you're going to write in it. Well, this is one of the things that we do. So we're allowing our students to write and be a little creative, even when they don't realize that they're writing. They think they're just being really funny, but what they're really doing is writing. And then, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, we do encourage videos, and we encourage them to take a picture. One time we were doing Venn diagrams, and I had a student who had some small children, and she did a Venn diagram with sandwiches, because both the sandwiches had bread, so it was in the middle. But then over here, one kid wanted peanut butter and jelly, so it was over here. The other kid wanted ham and cheese, so it was over here. And it was just a really cool, I was like, yes, you understand Venn diagrams because you applied it in your life where you are right now. So I enjoyed getting that picture from that student as a peer reply to. She posted it to one of her peers and talked about it. Something else, I mean, as instructors, when we create something, we know exactly what we intend to ask. And to us, the instructions make perfect sense, and there's no way that this could be misunderstood, or a student could, accidentally read it this way and go off on this side over here. But you guys know that's not true, right? So we definitely need to be very specific in the instructions. Make it obvious. Tell the students exactly what needs to be in their post and what exactly you expect from them. We've started doing just little bullets of things that must be included in the post. That seems to help. We also provide an example. Sometimes we'll use numbers that are outside of the range that we've given them. For example, on the human cannonball, they can choose the initial velocity anywhere from 75 to 125 or something like that. Maybe our example uses 70 or something like that. So we're giving them example, kind of showing them how it's going to need to be done, but then they're actually going to do it themselves. One other thing, I'm not sure if it's on the next slide or not, but if you notice with the evil genius, they were using their age. We actually have them figure out how many years and days they've been alive, and they convert that into a decimal. So maybe they've been alive for 35.338 years. And that's the A that they use. One of the reasons we did that is to reduce plagiarism. even if this discussion question winds up on the internet somewhere, they're going to have to plug in their age, or hopefully they're going to plug in their age. And so it's a little less prone for plagiarism. Once you've come up with this idea and you've written out the perfect set of instructions, it's always a good idea to have a colleague read over it. Say, hey, here's this new thing that I'm trying out. Read these instructions and let me know what you would post, and see what your colleague would post. If they develop an answer that's along the same line as yours, you know you're good to go. Sometimes though, when they read it, they're like, oh, I thought you wanted this over here, and they do something different. So the buddy system really works well here. Encourage your colleagues to read the instructions and try it. The more eyes you can get on it before you send it out to students, the better. Some of your colleagues will notice things that just never even crossed your mind. One example we were using, and we used M as an abbreviation for meters. But of course, all of our students, when they see M, they think miles. And so we had to make sure we went back, and instead of just putting an M, we wrote out meters so that they would know that it was meters. So just little things like that, little things that can clear up confusion before the students see it is always a really good idea. We've already talked about creativity and critical thinking. Those are definitely good things to include whenever we're developing discussion questions. This is one of our favorite little memes. So I know that the math people will get it. If you're not a math person, imagine a bell curve. And 3 standard deviations above the mean is way, way up on the right-hand side. So it's really, really high, right? And most people are underneath it, right? And so you're way up there. Carla, there you go. See, Carla gets it. Okay, now this is where the fun starts. And I realize we only have 8 minutes, something like that. But I asked you guys to kind of start thinking about something that maybe you could use in your area of instruction. So have you guys, oh yeah, Catherine, do it. Are there any really cool ones that you currently use or that you've thought of right now? Because I know there are a lot of different departments in here, a lot of different disciplines in here. One of them that we had at one of the presentations we did, and this was way back before COVID, so it was actually in person. Wow, crazy to think about that. There was, wasn't it a law? Wasn't it a law instructor, Leah? Yeah. You're muted, you're still
I'm
muted.
double muted, sorry. It was the one person would like present the case, the other person, or I'm sorry, I'm getting confused now and excited too. One of them was the law thing about defending the person and then like prosecuting the person. Then another one was about the job interview. So one person would do like a job interview and the other person would talk about finding the perfect candidate and stuff like that. So really cool stuff people came up with.
Yes, so yeah, one of them was about presenting a case, and I would just kind of put this out there, try not to choose anything too controversial, but you know, just choose something like what's the best flavor of ice cream, something like that. And one of the students will present a case for it, and then somebody else, you know, find all these reasons why it's not. And then one of them, while we were in the session, they were like, you know what? We've had a lot of instances of students not being hired because the future employer, the potential employer, will go look at their Facebook page. And so we had one of the instructors in that session say, I'm going to create a fake Facebook page. And one of the assignments would be for the students to go look at it and decide if they were going to hire that candidate or not, which I thought was really, really cool. Okay, you have to tell me about the there, and there. What is the there, and there?
That was a meme for, Catherine said there are a lot of grammar memes, and I said one of my favorites is there. Like there's always something about, you know, that's all. Sorry, off topic.
No, it's all good. Karen, yes, they either enjoy them or moan, but either way, you know they're paying attention. All right, I know we're almost out of time. So what I would encourage you to do, especially if there is a topic, and you don't have to do the whole course at once, right? But maybe there's one topic and you're like, man, this discussion board, this discussion question just, it isn't awesome. And that's our goal, is to make them, oh, Carla, yes. One of our goal is to make our discussion questions awesome. So you can either pick the worst one or just the one that inspires you and just revamp one of them. Again, think about the objective that you're trying to cover, and then think about an either humorous or just super interactive situation where the students might need that objective, and build your discussion question around it. Make sure that you share it with some colleagues before you send it out to students. Sometimes your colleagues come up with some really, really good ideas. And if they suggest an edit, you might really, really want to take it into consideration. And then you can always try it out for one semester. And if the students love it, awesome. And if not, you can tweak it for the next semester. But if you just want to start at one, just try one for this term, and then you can go on to the others later. Lorinda, I love it. Yes, yes. And I think this was in one of our other courses, one of our instructors. Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really good one. Figure out how long it's going to be until you are overtaken. This is my favorite one. Leah cringes every time I put this one up. I am a cat person. You can't see it, but right there's a cat tree. And most of the time there's a cat on it. So I'm definitely a cat person, but when students see this, they know they're, oh, I don't want a kitten to die. And so it's just another way to get them to remember things. All right, we are done. Do you guys have any questions?
There is one that came in asking to expand on the peer response piece a little more. And there's not much more detail to it than that. So if Sophia, you can expand on kind of what you would like to know about it, that may be helpful to give you more detailed information.
Yeah, let me just kind of tell you how it's set up where we are, and it's different everywhere. Like everybody has their own system, but where it's set up where we are for the discussion questions, they last, like partners and stuff. Sophia, in ours, we don't, but you can definitely do that, especially if your LMS or whatever you're using for your course, if it allows groups. We do, at one point in the term, divide our class up into groups. And they, this group collaborates and does this, and then this group collaborates and does this. They're all doing the same thing, but it's in a group format. So yes, you can definitely do that kind of thing. Where we are most of the time, it's just the entire class, and they're answering the discussion question. And then we also ask them to reply to 2 different classmates. So that's where the peer reply 1 and peer reply 2 come in. There is a time limit on those, and they are all graded. So they get 1 grade for the discussion board, but it includes that initial post, answering the question, and then those 2 peer replies. And that all goes into that 1 grade for that 1 week. Partners would be really cool, especially if you rotated them, like, not the same partner every week. I don't know. It depends on what you're teaching, I guess. But kind of rotate a little bit. And that way, especially if you're online, it'll help the students get to know each other a little bit better. Is that hopefully?
The one part of peer replies also is that if you give them something to talk about, at least like point them in a direction, then they're less likely to do like good job and things like that. So yeah, no, you can reply to anybody, but what we'll say is, like, once one person has a reply, then you'll have to go and do a reply to somebody else like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I challenge the students, especially when we're about halfway through. I'll say, try to reply to somebody you haven't replied to yet. Or if you get on the discussion board and this one post doesn't have a reply to that one. Just to, spread the love.
Yeah. Awesome. And this was a wonderful end to my day at IES. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that. Thank you both so much for joining us and sharing your enthusiasm, your creativity, and all of your knowledge and expertise with us. What I'm going to do now for our participants is launch a quick 3-question poll on this presentation. So I'll give you all a minute to go ahead and answer that for me. All right, and that concludes the final concurrent session of the day. Tammy and Leah, thank you again so much for being here with us today. On behalf of everyone at Hawks, thank you to our presenters and attendees for being a part of IES 2021. Recordings of this session and all of our sessions from today and yesterday will be provided in the coming days. If you haven't already, don't forget to stop by the exhibit hall and say hello to the Hawks team. They will be there for a little while longer. If you view a quick demonstration, you're entered into the hourly giveaway to win your choice of a smart pen, a standing desk, or a $100 Amazon gift card. Thank you all one last time, and I hope you had a wonderful IES 2021.